Hello and welcome to the Ascendant Art podcast, where we are on a search for art that is ascending above the mainstream. He says some other stuff after that, but basically we're trying out a new format right now. We're calling it Weeb Bout. And I know, our regular format is pretty loose to begin with, but this format is specifically focused on Vinny and myself's constant butting of heads on various anime titles.
It's kind of the fact that I'm a big Isekai fan and Joey is not. But, I mean, whatever.
I'm not against Isekai. It's just, you told me to go watch this one, and there are things I really love, and there are things I freaking hate.
That's because it actually is compelling and has characters that aren't just cookie cutter.
It's compelling me to tell it to screw off and go away.
So since Joey hasn't mentioned it, the anime we're talking about today is Re:Zero, which I've talked about a lot in our podcast previously. And I finally convinced Joey to actually watch the first season. He's currently a little bit into the second season. So this isn't, we're doing anime only for this conversation. I am well aware, and I've talked with Joey about it, that the actual...
Yeah, you've already busted out the books on the side and been like, well, in these books, this and this and this happened, and that's really cool, and you get so much more character development.
Well, that's true for everything that's a book versus the...
Yeah, you know what my friends tell me when I'm like, the movie isn't as good as the book? They tell me, shut up.
Every anime drops things from when it can... It's very rare to have an only anime show where it's a completely original product. Cowboy Bebop, I believe, was one of the few classic ones that was a completely original content. I think it was developed and made for being an anime instead of being a manga or something first. Most anime you guys are, including ourselves as fans, watch are basically, they develop the animes as selling tools for manga, light novels, or whatever source material is the thing. Which is why animes usually get maybe one season, and the mangas or light novels will be continuing for years. So in our case, we're talking about Re:Zero, which is up to arc 7, and and each arc has hundreds of chapters. So the anime, I believe season 1 and season 2 have taken it through the first 4 arcs that were written. So we're going to be sticking to the anime for this conversation. The first part of this episode, I think, is we're going to be spoiler free, and we'll give very clear warning before we get into spoiler territory. It's only fair because the second season did just drop recently, so there's a lot of people who might be getting into this for the first time, and we don't want to ruin it because Re:Zero does have a lot of not like gimmicky
and
twists.
Even if it's like a year or two down the road, I mean, there's so many animes out there. You pretty much hear about them from word of mouth. It's not like you're seeing a lot of ads for them on TV these days. You'll see ads for the services, but I mean, there are plenty of animes I went and watched many years after they were a popular thing. So
exactly, like you finally watching this one because I guilted you into it after many, many times.
I mean,
well, I make so many references to it, you kind of had to just to have the context.
Kind of, yeah,
a
little bit.
So to give the general gist of Re:Zero, it's an isekai, meaning it's a main character is taken from current year modern Japan, because it's anime, so they're Japanese, and he gets reincarnated into another world. And of course, unlike other times where you're immediately given a order to fight the Demon King or the Demon Lord, or you are the Demon Lord and you have to, take over the world, he gets no instructions. He just wakes up. Now, he is kind of an otaku type character, so he's familiar with the concept from the beginning when he wakes up and so he doesn't actually question being in another world. And that's just within the first 5 minutes. So I'm not worried about that being a spoiler. It is an isekai. You're gonna get that right from the beginning. So the main character is named Subaru, and he's the one that you follow throughout the story. It's a pretty compelling one. The first episode is an extra long episode by Anime Sin. It's almost an hour. I think Shield Hero also did that, where they did a really long first episode.
If you're watching the on Crunchyroll, they actually at this point have a director's cut of season 1 that also loops in the first OVA to fit it chronologically where it's supposed to be. And I think it's only 14 episodes, but it's the entire first season just condensed down into 50-minute to an hour episodes,
Oh,
which
cool.
is nice.
That is, yes, I'm going to have to go back and watch that one. I watched it when it was just the regular non-director's cut one, so that's good. So yeah, so Subaru is not a likable character. I want to get that out there first.
Not at all.
Which is actually one of the things that makes it compelling. He's not a lot of isekai makes their lead characters super bland because they're just OP, they can do whatever they want, characters, and it actually isn't great from a storytelling standpoint. Subaru is somebody who has room for character growth and development, and I think that's a compelling choice to make, and it's not just a Mary Sue character. And you can enjoy that for, if that's what you like. There's some isekais where it's a power fantasy where you really appreciate just having the OP guy who can just do whatever he wants. But having one that actually is somebody who maybe initially you see a lot of flaws with, it gives a lot of room over the course of the series to let the character develop and actually learn from mistakes, grow as a person, have character traits that you maybe weren't as fond of the beginning, but you see how they do have value later. And it also allows other characters to do the same thing when they interact with Subaru. So I like that choice, and that's one of the reasons I put this show in such a high regard, because they don't do the easy thing. They actually make the character have to work through the series.
All right, so if you were to sum it up in like a one-sentence summary, how would you describe this particular isekai in such a manner as what makes it unique?
I will say one thing that, so this part might be a slight spoiler, but it has to be addressed for me to address why it's a unique thing. And I'll try to keep it as minimum as possible, but to make it clear about my one-sentence explanation.
Hey, if it's something that happens within the first 2 episodes and you're aware of it by then, I don't call it a spoiler.
Okay, that'll make it easier. So, ReZero is an isekai about a main character who doesn't get any powers except the power to suffer immense pain, discomfort, and trauma by being, basically his power is being able to have a save point that he can access after he dies. So that's the selling point. That's the interest. That's the twist, right? His power is, and they call it return by death, which is accessing a save point, but he doesn't.
The only person who calls it that is him.
Yep, because he can't. Well, yeah. Well, he and it's a good name for it. So that's when I talk about the character has to learn things like this isn't something where he doesn't feel the pain, the trauma, or if it's a horrible, traumatic death, he remembers it, and he has to go back from the save point and try to do things the right way. What's interesting is sometimes he does things wrong the second time in trying to do things exactly right, just like he did the first time. But it's like anything else where if you're, when you're trying to do something that came naturally, you can end up screwing it up. So it is a fun little, way to do that. Some people have called it like a cheap way to do a time loop, and I can sort of see how they're saying that, but I think it's different because it's like going, back to a save point in the game and then you have to repeat the actions of it. So some people have argue that ReZero is kind of like a video game style isekai. A Sword Art Online is probably the most famous, video game isekai. I was like, I think it's a tradition. I think it's a more regular fantasy world isekai with because return by death isn't really something where you have like a stat screen or like Shield Hero where you actually have an RPG system that they're accessing to level up. So I do think, it's the isekai, it's a regular fantasy one, and this is just
I mean the system's there, but he's aware of it, but he has no access to it. Like, he doesn't get to check his stats. He doesn't get to see if he levels up. None of that. He's just kind of in the world.
And it's a really compelling world. And that's what makes ReZero a great anime is the characters that are in it, right? There's lots of isekai.
But before we get into that, I'm going to give you my summary because you're getting past your summary at this point. And my summary is random guy ends up in new world and decides that he's in love with the first girl who gives him a second look.
Well, I mean, yeah, but she's an elf girl, so you should like that.
Half.
Like, I mean, isn't the main character in your book a half elf?
No, she's not. She's full elf.
She's full elf?
She's full. There are half elves in my story, but no, she's full elf. I was like, now you've confused me. Did I say she was a half? I don't think she was a half elf.
Maybe I just throwing that out there to make you second guess yourself.
And I don't have a problem with it, but once we get into the characters, this is kind of my gripe. Like, there are several other characters who he develops a much stronger emotional attachment for, but he just constantly falls back on that. No, I'm in love with that first girl that I met. I'm in love with that first girl that I met. I love her. My heart belongs to her. And it's like, you've talked to her like twice, dude.
And I think that's one of the things where I say Subaru is not 100% a great character, a great person. He's a great character. He's not a great person at first. Like, that is a flaw that he immediately latched on to Amelia, who's the character we're talking about, and thinks that he's, in love with her immediately. Now, where I think ReZero is good is that over time, they take that and they give the characters room to find organic routes for that problem. And it's actually a way to introduce problems, right? In a non-spoiler sense, the Subaru's gung-ho, barge right in attitude to his love of Amelia gets him into a lot of trouble, like really a lot of trouble throughout the first season.
Yeah, and not the happy fan service trouble, more like the, oh, you fucking died again trouble.
But it's all, and not just that, but like where he gets humbled. And sometimes the save point moves, and so he doesn't get to go back and always completely repeat things. So sometimes he's made a terrible choice that ends up making him look bad, and he just has to move on with that as his now ingrained history, which I also like. He doesn't get to choose his save points.
Yeah, reminds you of all those old Sierra games where you fucked yourself and you didn't even know it, and then you gotta go back to the beginning because you saved.
Yep, and that's what's great. I mean, so he meets, so in the first episode, he meets Amelia and decides he must be in love with her because they're going on the fact that Subaru, Natsuki Subaru, who's the main character, is familiar from his, modern life in Japan with Isekai. So he just assumes super attractive elf girl is the one for me. And he pursues that. And eventually there's things that come up that will make it more palatable and organically grow from there. I am on the REM being best girl train. We'll talk about that.
All right. Well, before we get too deep into the characters, I think we've done our summary for the kind of the theme, the feel of it. If we're going to do a 1 to 10 scale for originality, what would you give it?
For originality?
Because there are some things that are very isekai, very kind of generic about it, but there are other things that it does really well. So if you were to score it,
I would say on originality, my score would probably be around a 7.5, 8, because it's within the genre, but it does things, it executes them very well and does new things that other stuff in the genre doesn't do, and has been lifted since then by copiers of it.
I'll go with probably a 6.5, 7. Just because, and that's, I wanted to lead into this because before we get into characters, because characters are the biggest thing, and we're going to be on characters for a while. So before we get into characters, the setting, the world that he goes to. I mean, does it feel special? What sets it apart? What makes that world compelling?
So this is hard to say. So in the first season, the answer is it's very generic. For about 3/4 of the first season, it's a fairly generic isekai fantasy world.
Yep.
By about that last quarter, though, that last 7 or 8 episodes, it turns the corner and does things that makes it a very distinct world. And it does them very well.
I think I could agree with that.
And I would say by going into the second season from there, it continues to build its own lore to make it a very distinct, separate kind of world.
Yeah, I almost think the first season was kind of a standalone thing. They didn't know if they would ever get another season, and when they got picked up for a second season, you start to get the full lore dump early on.
I'm going to tell you right now, because you haven't gotten through it, each one of these seasons has an end point where you can tell that they weren't sure that another season, because that happens with anime, right? It's super popular and people love it. And like One Punch Man was one of the most popular.
And you can almost drive away the fans if you get canceled. Like, like if a season ends and like there's something I want to know and things haven't been resolved, and then they're like, well, it didn't get picked up for a second season, I'm like, man, fuck that anime, fuck that studio, I'm never watching their shit again. Because it's so disheartening not to be able to see how it ends when you're really into it.
I know, and it's so different than what we're used to here in the West. Like, in terms of the way we do TV. Although I will say that Netflix sort of does that. Like, I mean, we're about to get a 4th season of Stranger Things 10 years in, or 12, whatever many years it is.
Yeah, Stranger Things. The first season was good. The second season was okay. It's come off the rails. I don't care anymore.
Well, I was just using it as an example of like one of the only things that's kind of working on an anime schedule, which is you might get a first season that's super popular and it could take 2, 3, 4 years to get the second season. And then after that, maybe you'll get another one. I mean, it's most anime is one and done season wise.
Yeah.
And even though the mangas or light novels go on in perpetuity or go on immensely, versus what was animated, it just is how Japan does things. It's the rare exception. You've got the people will point to Fairy Tale or what is it, One Piece. I mean, as for every one of those or Pokemon that have gone on.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Z, those kind of things.
15, 20 years, there's hundreds of animes that are beloved animes that only get 1 or 2 seasons, and you're lucky if they keep going. So it's crazy. It's very, I think ReZero is gonna get a third season. I think they're planning to do it, but I don't think they've even made the announcement yet for it. So, but the story is really great. I can tell you because I am further ahead and caught up with the actual light novel and web novel.
Oh, you're already bringing them in. You're bringing it. You said you weren't going to bring those in.
No, I'm just going to say that I do think that the world, if it continues to be animated, is going to continue to make itself very distinct and different. I would say by season 2, 3, if they do a season 3 and 4, that originality score would go from like a 7 to like a 9 to 10 for being original, because it's such a distinct universe as they keep building it.
Yeah, and some of the little things like they've got the little dragons that pull all the carriages around. Those are kind of cool. I mean, I know it's not the only place where something like that has been done, but I like the way they're animated. I like the way it looks. I like how it's been a consistent theme throughout. It doesn't suddenly change to horses at any point. Like, this is how this world does it. This is how they handle commerce. I like some of the rules with the, like, I guess magic is used because everybody has a gate inside them.
Yep,
and
it has a very distinct and what's called a hard magic system, meaning that it's very specific and you can't break it, and they stick to it, and they stick to it pretty well. Like the
when
people,
we get into spoiler territory, I'll dig into that a little more, but
yeah, the people who are high-end users are the ones who can do high-end things, and you're not going to see a power creep where all of a sudden, like, Goku goes Super Saiyan. Like, if you were a low-end magic user, you pretty much stay a low-end magic user. You had to, you're distinctly gifted when it comes to magic one way or the other, or there's a process by which you can enhance the magic capability that everybody could do. And it's a very specific way with teaming, like tag teaming with higher power characters.
Yeah, I like that about the system. The main mechanic of the main character, the whole return by death thing, it's interesting, and they use it in a lot of interesting ways. They also from time to time use it to fuck with the viewer, so both good and bad, but it never feels like they're using it as a red herring per se. Since we're sticking to season 1, I will say that, but I do think they screwed with me hard on the season 1 to season 2 transition. We'll get into that when we talk spoilers.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Because it annoys the shit out of me, and it's one of my bigger gripes, we'll say.
So far, you're like 3 episodes into season 2. You haven't even waited for them to address your gripe. But yeah.
No, I mean, they've addressed my gripe. I just, like I said, I have a problem with it, and I'm sure you will understand my problem, but dismiss it because it's just a silly little gripe I have. So yeah, let's move on to the characters. Let's start talking characters.
All right.
So he's a piece of shit. I hate him.
But that's the way it's supposed to be. Like, it's not like where it's easy for him. He actually has to earn his growth, and that's good. That's a good thing, and we shouldn't be bad about that.
His growth just constantly goes back and forth and back and forth.
Isn't that a more natural thing? Like, people don't always go a straight line. You're going to have ups and downs and backslides and forward movements.
I don't disagree, but they happen to extremes a lot of times.
But I would say that there's extreme reasons a lot of the time.
Yes, there are, but I mean, when we really get into it, we're talking about the main mechanic that is his power. The whole I die and I return.
But like I said, he does remember the trauma and I mean, they're not always like dying in your sleep peacefully. I mean, that's never happened to Sue. Well, I guess there was
It
one.
happened once.
It happened once.
It happened once. He
Yeah.
went to sleep in his bed and he woke up in the morning.
And it was great because he was like, "What?"
He was like, "Wait a minute,
Gosh darn it!
I died last night."
So we've got Natsuki Subaru, who's the main character, the lead, and both Joey and I do agree that he's kind of a dick a-hole at the start. I say that it shows.
What we don't agree on is his development.
His development. I think that he perseveres through trauma and learns lessons and grows character with backslides that are appropriate, and then he gets his comeuppance when he backslides the wrong way. This is a show which I think one of the main things that is very clear is, as a character, when you make the wrong choices, you get punished. It's very rare for somebody in this show who's making nothing but good, nice choices to not get rewarded in some way. But at the same time, you do see how other people's actions can cause good people harm, which makes it's usually not the good people just doing their things. It's somebody else acting on them that causes harm to them. So I do like that. So we've got Subaru. We've talked about Amelia, who is the lead female, the lead main character female. She's a half elf.
I would say Amelia is the single most boring character in any anime ever.
I mean, you're basically rehashing 5 years worth of internet debates about ReZero Season 1 because people who don't continue with the story only had Season 1 of the anime. So yes, I will grant you that Season 1, Amelia, is a very bland, not rootable character. Like you don't really root for Amelia. You know who you root for, and we're going to say it right now. Her name's Rem.
I mean, I'm torn. Like I'm in a 50-50 split between Rem and Rom. Go figure.
You do like the so Ram and Rem are twin sisters, one with pink hair, one with blue hair. Rem is the blue-haired best girl.
She really is best girl. I mean,
she is like what's great is not in spoilers, but there's, because of the conceit of this show, there's times where Rem, who is your best girl and you love Rem but she will F you up. Which is, the character has to deal with having instances where he's going to remember Rem being horrifically angry at him and like to the point of doing very bad things.
Oh, careful. We're bordering on spoiler territory. Let's not get too close.
Yeah.
We'll get into that.
And then what's great is her sister Ram, who is I guess would she class as a Sunder? She's
mildly tsundere. Mildly. At best, it's mild.
She won't ever call him by his proper first name. She says that he's an F up every time.
Well, Barasu is a cooler sounding name anyway, so.
Yeah, so there is another character that we can mention that is an overarching character in Season 1. The character that doesn't actually ever make a physical appearance in Season 1, but is by default a main character, and that's Satella, who is the Witch of Envy.
Yeah, she's mentioned in episode 2 or the end of episode 1, so that's not spoilers. She's the Witch of Envy, and there is very little explanation in all of Season 1 as to what the Witch of Envy even fucking is.
Yeah, so that, again, the Season 1, I think you were right, was
she bad. That's all we know.
They didn't know whether Season 1 was going to be the only season they got to make of ReZero. So they may give you enough of the lore to have enough to work with what they did. But they didn't do it deep enough to make you feel like you were being let down if they didn't continue the show. Season 1, as it originally aired and was done without the director's cut, was a standalone season that stood on its own and could have just been one season of a really great anime. Satella is the overarching antagonist of the ReZero universe. And so it is important to mention her because you, going forward, kind of have to know who she is if you're going to keep going forward with the story. But be warned, like in the first season, she doesn't make a physical appearance, but her shadow looms large in everything that happens. Let's see, other characters worth mentioning.
I mean, there's a lot of good characters. I don't think you gave Rom enough love, so I'm going to say it right now. While I do agree that Rem is best girl for Subaru, I think Ram is best girl in general. Because at the end of the day, Ram is the more talented of the two.
Well, yeah.
We'll talk about it in spoilers. We'll
Yeah.
talk about it in spoilers. But Ram is the more talented of the two. Ram is the kind of the level-headed one who does a lot of the thinking and is paying a lot more attention to what's going on. And well, since we've already kind of discussed it, like at the end of the day, Subaru's kind of a piece of shit, and Ram is one of those characters who doesn't take Subaru's shit, and she can dish it back as every time. So I like that about her, and there is a pretty cool arc in the first one where she gets a lot of screen time, and yeah, I think Ram is, as far as my personal selection goes, is best girl.
Yeah. I'm not going to disagree with that. Rom has her fans, and I like Rom. I think Rem's best girl. When we get into spoiler territory, we'll talk about a specific reason why Rem won over everybody that year in anime as the best girl, and why to this day Rem statues still sell a tremendous amount.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are good reasons for it. I'm just spoilers again, but like it's spoiler territory before we get into it. But there are things about all the cool stuff she did that piss me off. we'll get to that.
Should we mention Beatrice for, I'm going to give the standard anime lolly warning. I'm not a lolly. I don't deal with that. So Beatrice is there for that fan service specifically.
Yeah, she definitely fits an archetype that always appears in these things, and they explain it away in the same way that they explain it away every time. Seems to be some kind. She's not human. She's some kind of fey creature that looks like a fucking 8-year-old.
She's a spirit. So there are spirits in ReZero who exist within this world as part of the magic system. One of the main characters that you're going to run into as a spirit is actually Amelia's guardian.
Yeah, and the spirits are much harder to pin down because we don't get a lot of examples of limitations or rules with the spirits. They almost could be considered gods with some of the stuff you see them accomplish.
I would say, especially, we're going to talk like one we're talking about now is Puck, who is the guardian spirit for Amelia.
He's a better character than Beatrice, and this goes back kind of almost to setting, but they kind of give all the spirits like weird, quirky dialogue patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that may just be a thing with the English dub because I don't do subtitles, and I know the subtitle hipsters are going to come for me for saying it, but fuck subtitles. I want to watch, and I'm a slow reader. So
no, the dialogue it's in the Japanese too.
Yeah, because Beatrice always says "I suppose" at the end of most of her sentences, and I'm just like,
correct, that's in there.
Grammatically, what you're saying doesn't even make fucking sense, woman.
Oh, calm down. But yeah,
I'm a grammar Nazi. That's what I do.
So
but I'd say Puck isn't as bad, but there are some weird quirks to the way Puck talks. He's overly bubbly and happy and friendly 90% of the time. It's almost like you're talking to a kid.
Yeah, but that 10%
weirds me out because he always refers to Amelia as his daughter.
Yep. But when Puck goes that other 10%, it is dramatic.
Yeah. We'll get to it.
Yeah. I think one of the more off-putting characters that people are kind of not is Roswell. I mean, if you watch anime, it's probably not as big a deal to you, but
I love his character right up until he opens his mouth.
Yeah, the character.
Every time he talks, I'm like, dude, shut up. Dude, you need to hire somebody to speak on your behalf because I don't know if you're trying to do iambic pentameter or you're trying to sing or you think you're Michael Jackson or what.
I'm going to tell you right now, season 2 will give you a very different perspective and you'll see it'll make you change your thoughts on Roswell, which is another, I
really like his character. I do, but
you're going to see the depth they give all the characters, even these side characters. Each of them gets some, like, even if they're characters that are only in it for 2 episodes, the way they do the character design and just give you hints. I mean, there's so much depth, even for the people who are only there. One of my favorite characters, and he's there for basically the back 7 or 8 episodes, is Wilhelm Van Astria, who
is he the old guy?
Yes.
The old guy with like I want to say 2 swords, but I'm pretty sure at some point he may have had 6.
Yeah, so he's the old butler.
Yeah, he's the most badass character in the whole damn series.
And he gets one of the. It makes me think of if anybody's ever watched Wreck-It Ralph, when they talk about like the first person shooter girl character, and like she has the saddest backstory of all time. I'm like, no, I've seen ReZero and William Van Astria. He's the one who has that backstory.
He's a contender. I don't know if he's got the saddest backstory because I've watched some fucked up animes, but he's definitely a contender.
Yeah, and now what's interesting is his grandson, who's a character in the show, is given what would be traditionally the OP Isekai power. Reinhard Van Astria, he basically has the OP power where he's undefeatable in the ReZero world.
Wait, which one's he?
He's the red-haired knight. You see him in the first.
Oh yeah, I forgot about him. He's kind of critical in the first quarter of the season, and then he's gone. He's just fucking gone for the rest of the season.
Again, the characters have things going on the side. This world is moving. You're following Natsuki Subaru, but the world around him has things going on, and they don't wait. That's one of the things I like about it, because when you watch some animes, it feels like the world only exists for the main character and their group. In ReZero, you really get a sense that the world around them is functioning completely independent of what they're doing until they show up into the area where something was going on. And that stuff was happening without them there to be involved.
Yeah, and they keep that omniscience mostly limited. There are scenes here and there where you'll see things happening that have nothing to do with Subaru, but it's rare, which is kind of good because you do have the ability to kind of get into the same headspace as the main characters. You know what they know, you see what they see, with a few limited exceptions where they use that dramatic irony. But for the most part, they don't do it, and I think it helps. I think it actually builds.
And it serves a lot of storytelling purposes, because as Subaru loops because of his return by death, he'll gain information he didn't have because he's not aware of everything. So it can help him or sometimes hurt him gaining this information that he'll learn and going and being involved with other characters. And it sometimes takes a few efforts to know what is the right strategy with the information he's learning, because he's not omniscient where he's aware of everything or can control everything. Another couple characters that I'll just throw in are the knights, right? There's Julius. The way they did the story arc with Julius and Subaru was actually really entertaining to me, and I thought very well done.
I like Julius better than Subaru.
And should.
I have from the beginning.
But you should, because when we talk about the spoilers, we'll talk about why Julius was probably completely right in everything he did from the beginning. The character that I'm not as fond of is Ferris, because it's kind of
Which one's Ferris?
Catboy girl.
Oh, the one they call Felix in the dubs. Yeah, I like Felix. I like Felix.
I mean, it's just I don't like ambiguity. Just make it a girl.
I mean, if I was in prison, I'd want to be in prison with Felix.
You were in the Navy, so I understand. And there's a whole set of princesses, right, within the show that are introduced, and you get more time with some than others in season 1.
Yeah, they pull a bait and switch with all the princesses, though. They really do. Like, at the beginning, when you first meet all the princesses, and it's late in the series, so it's kind of a spoiler, but mostly not. But when you first meet all the princesses, they go hard to make sure that you think each and every one of them is a bitch.
Which is, I think, true, because when you're introduced to them, they're in the context of all vying for a greater role.
Yeah, they're at court,
yeah.
So they're behaving in that weird nobility way.
What's interesting is the way they introduced them. It was designed to give you an immediate understanding of their core nature. And it seems off-putting because you're at that point, you're supposed to be a fan of Amelia, right? She's one of the princess choices. And so when you reach these other ones, you only see what they're bringing to the table as negatives. But what I really love about ReZero is they flip that script, and later in the story, what you thought was a negative aspect to those characters turns out to be very important to positive developments for everybody.
Yeah, I'm rooting for the one with green hair.
So Joey's talking about Krush, who is the more militaristic of the princess choices. She's
I mean, a close second would be the one with the purplish hair,
Anastasia,
because she has her own private mercenary army.
so Anastasia is the merchant princess. So she, instead of being a military leader who has her own army, she buys them, which is nice as a choice.
The other two can both fuck off, as far as I'm concerned.
I think you're talking about Priscilla, but there is one that is also introduced very early in the first couple episodes, Felt, who is an interesting character because she ends up in the princess running, but her backstory as a character, and it's in the first two episodes, so we can talk about it right now, is that she was she was an unknown royal, lineage. So she lived in the ghettos, and she's a thief, and she's lived a hard, difficult, terrible life, and so she has no love or respect for the system as it exists.
Yeah, but in all honesty, like, I think Subaru would have been better off falling in love with her, but the problem was she didn't give him a second look. She was the first girl he ran into, but she didn't give him a second look.
Well, I mean, she would fall into the lolly category, so I'm okay with that.
She knew a piece of shit when she saw one. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, because he hasn't gone through his growth yet. Subaru starts as a very terrible, stunted character, right? We keep talking about it, but it's, everything that you say is a negative becomes the positive for me.
It builds. It does build. There are a couple of backslides we're going to have to talk to shortly here, where we can get more into that. There's one other character, though, that we haven't touched on that I really liked, although he barely appeared, and it's the guy with the helmet that is
You're talking about Aldebaran. Aldebaran. I can't say his name very good.
Yeah, that guy. I think there's more to him, and I think it's going to be awesome.
You are right. There is. And yes, it will be awesome. When we're not on the podcast, I can tell you if you'd like to know, because it will take a long time for them to get to his explanation in the anime. We're probably talking like it would be season 4 or 5, and we're just getting season 2. So, done.
Okay, so he's a ways off yet. Yeah.
Well, it's not a ways off. He's in the story more, but when you finally get the backstory, it comes later, and it's super worth it. It's great. But yeah, so he's in the service of one of the princess choices, Priscilla.
Probably the worst princess choice.
Remember, we haven't had the time to get into why she might still be an okay person. We've only seen her terrible.
Okay, but let's be honest. They all stepped up in front of the freaking council and kind of gave this is how I want to rule the kingdom. And hers was, everyone needs to fall down and bow before me and lick my feet and shit. Like, she's
Regina.
I don't see a redeeming quality in that. She's a stuck-up bitch.
Well, there could be qualities, but yes, but she is probably, of the princess choices, the most obnoxious person with what she said. Priscilla is the Regina from Mean Girls, who just, has people around her to serve her for her purposes. There are a couple characters who they're in the beginning first couple episodes and then don't come up again for till for the first season. One of them is the assassin. I don't think she's in it again for the first season.
Oh, you're talking... Yeah, she's the first couple episodes.
And she is a super compelling character design and creepy and everything you'd want out of that type of character.
Yeah, they've got a thing I've noticed in ReZero where they like people who do creepy licking. Like, licking their lips, licking their sword, licking other people. It's gross. Stop licking people. Put your tongue back in your mouth.
Which I think means that we should probably talk about our final character that we would probably need to bring up and address for ReZero season 1, and that's Beetlejuice.
Oh, not the carriage driver?
Yeah, well, I guess the carriage driver too.
He does nothing in season 1. Okay,
yeah.
They started giving him an arc, but like he does nothing. I was kidding. Yeah. It's Beetlejuice?
Beetlejuice. I mean, it's Japanese.
They call him Betelgeuse or something in the anime, but I'm like, it's Beetlejuice, right? They're talking Beetlejuice right now.
If we say it one more time, Michael Keaton's going to show up on our podcast.
Sweet! That'll probably get us a lot more subs.
But I think, in a non-spoiler way, the character design for him was amazing and is probably one of my all-time favorites for creepy AF like anime villains in a season. It's not just the design, it was the voice work. Both the Japanese original voice acting and the American dub are actually fantastic. But the animators went the extra mile to make sure that this guy projected creepiness 100% of the time, so that you were always uncomfortable every time he was on screen. Even when he's not like attacking characters, it's just like you said, off-putting. The behaviors, the mannerisms, the tics that he has. And those are all, and like that's all the animators and the director making choices that they don't have to do, but it works so well that they went for it, and it's amazing. I can't just tell people who haven't seen it, and like until you see it on screen, you don't understand like what I'm talking about for how creepy this guy is, and it's fantastic.
I agree. I actually did really like the way they built him out as a villain. There were a couple things that got a little confusing, but once you figured it out, it made more sense. So it detracted momentarily, but they recovered from a minor stumble. In my opinion, it could just be that I'm a dumbass, but I think, though, at this point, we're going to have to get into spoiler territory to get any more specific.
Yeah. So to finish out the non-spoiler discussion, I'm going to give my non-spoiler, just full summary review, which is that ReZero is an amazingly compelling character study anime that has great action, set design, character design, depth of even the side characters. You may not like Natsuki Subaru, but if you give this show the full run for season 1, just stick with the whole thing, because like I said, by the last quarter of the episodes, it really picks up. But even before that, you're going to get a lot of compelling story and world building. Like, this is a world you really feel like exists, which is not always true for anime. So that's why I rate ReZero so high. I think to be a really amazing anime, you have to make sure that people feel like it's a world that really is living and breathing and isn't just a function of, what would it be a good way? You know how like in the holodeck in Star Trek, when they were there, it only made the rooms as the characters walked into them. And I think that's a good way to realize when you're telling a bad story, where if it feels like the room only comes into life and creation when your main character walks into it, you're doing the story wrong. And that's why I think ReZero was such a good anime.
From my perspective, I would say ReZero does have extremely compelling characters, save one. But the world does feel generic from time to time. Although it feels alive, it does have a lot of generic elements. Those improve as the story progresses. But I almost think ReZero would be better without Subaru Natsuki. like just if we could get a redo of that and like maybe swap him out for a character that I don't hate so much.
Careful using the term redo, because the big anime with redo in the title is not one we're going to talk about on our podcast.
Oh, right. Yeah. They like those re's at the beginning. Like,
yeah.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, the character, there are times when I'm really impressed with Subaru Natsuki and I really enjoy the character. And then he immediately does something to fuck it all up just right after that. And it's back to like, he's still a piece of shit. I still don't like him.
But to be fair, all the characters around him feel that way and tell him this in the show. It's not like he gets, there are animes where the lead character gets to turn a bad corner and everyone still like loves him and just dotes on him. In ReZero, when Natsuki Subaru turns the corner and does something stupid, everybody calls him out on doing like something stupid. Well, except for Best Girl.
I was going to say... But we're going to get into that now. So spoilers ahead. If you want to go watch it and come back later. But we're going into spoiler territory and we're going in hard.
Spoilers start now.
So also we missed a character. But we're still in spoiler territory. The first character that I'm going to talk about was the one we missed. The big huge dude who ran the pawn shop.
Ram.
Was his name Ram too?
No, there's Ram, and Rom, R-O-M.
But they always call Rom in the English dub. I think they called him something different. I can't remember what. It might have been like Red.
It's supposed to be Rem and Ram.
Okay.
Like
random
access
cool
memory, read-only memory.
I liked his character.
Yep.
But you don't see a whole lot of his character.
He was only in like the first 2 episodes and then he's gone.
Yeah, he shows up randomly once or twice after that, but really just like happens to be in the neighborhood, helps out a little, moves on with his life.
So now we're full into spoilers. So we
Yeah.
can talk about why I disagree, because now we can be specific on why he got his ass handed to him every time he made terrible decisions. Like sometimes literally by Rem dropping a morning star down and fucking him up.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I liked how you didn't know it was Rem the first time it happened.
Yep.
You just saw his eyeball roll across the floor.
Exactly.
And then the episode was over.
This is all right. So now that we're in spoilers, like these guys did, like there were so many great end episodes where in the last 2 minutes, Natsuki Subaru has these most horrific, terrible death sequences, and they leave you on that, and you know he's going to return by death, but it's just like, whoa,
Yeah.
that sucked, man. Like there's Rem like taking a morning star and just destroying him. You've got Puck when he goes, when Amelia dies in one of the episodes. Puck, who is her little play, all you know is she's this little playful, he looks like a kitten spirit that everybody, oh, this is so nice. And then you find out that Puck is like a apocalyptic level end of the world powered spirit, and he was only being nice because he loved Amelia. And once she was
he's
gone,
basically a god.
yeah, and once she was gone, he was like, I'm gonna freeze the entire world and kill it.
Yeah, because you see there's a couple times it happens, because he fucks this up on numerous occasions, because it's an extremely complex. Basically, there are two main arcs where it gets extremely complex, and he has to die probably a dozen times between the two before he figures out a path forward.
And it's
First
great
being,
because he carries the cycle. You can see, and I think this is one of the things they do really well. The psychological trauma, and what's interesting is the way they do it in ReZero. The actual trauma of him dying is bad. Like he hates the dying bad, but the runs, the life instances, the loops, if you want to call them, I think they call them loops online most of the time.
Yeah.
The loops that are the worst for him, or when his bad decisions end up hurting the people around him, and he carries like that burden. It's one of the not fun things, but one of the really well done things in this anime, when he has a loop where he caused of the people he cared about to be horrifically killed and he sees it, the trauma he carries back when he restarts his life is palpable. Like you can see like the PTSD of having just seen, like what I'm thinking of specifically, and I'm going to, since we're in the spoilers, when Beetlejuice, when he takes Rem and he breaks her neck right in front of him.
Oh, he does more than breaks her neck, dude.
But yeah,
he twists her like a fucking swizzle stick.
It's amazingly well animated.
It's disturbing.
But it's disturbing.
It's awesome, but it's disturbing.
And Subaru's face seeing that, and then he dies and he comes back and he sees Rem happy and alive, and he's just like, it's done. Like he's
pretty broken after that one.
Yeah, and so that's one of the, and since we're in spoilers, the living through those kinds of loops where he made bad choices and that happens is a really compelling reason why he might have backslides into being more cowardly and just trying to like run away from what's going to happen.
But I'd say the two major death arcs, like the major ones where he's looping repeatedly over and over and over, are the first one where they go to save Rem.
Yeah, so that's the mansion arc.
Yeah, and the second one where they are actually trying to defeat the witch's cult.
And that's the witch's cult arc. And I loved the so the whale fight was actually supposed to only be 2 episodes, and they were so happy with what was going to, they extended it to 3 episodes.
They made the right choice, because that was without a doubt the climax of the entire first season.
I mean, I love, and because and that's why I love Van Astria. Wilhelm Van Astria's like, he gets the epic he gets the backstory where the whale and fighting the whale is what his wife, which is and this is one of the things I think how you can do diversity without forcing it. You find out that his wife was actually the sword god of the world, like the hero that his grandson has now inherited the title.
Yeah, she was the sword master.
Yeah, she was the sword master.
She wielded the legendary sword.
Yeah, it wasn't him. Like you assume it must just be him because we had, because that's how it normally, but it was his wife. And so she was defeated trying to fight this whale. And so he has lived his life hating. And
he is Captain Ahab.
Yeah, it's great. It's like it's literally his white whale. And thanks to Natsuki Subaru, and it took him 3 or 4 loops to put the information together and realize. And this is one of the good things I like we talked about. he was getting bits and pieces of this information at each loop, and it took him 3 or 4 times to realize, oh shit, I've got a lot of information that I can use. And he goes to Krush, who's the green-haired general princess, and he leverages his information with her and the purple-haired merchant princess to make a coalition to take out the white whale, in the hopes that he can then leverage that to get their aid to help him take on the witches cult.
And the only reason he even did that was because he was trying to get back to the mansion to save Amelia, because Amelia was going to die, and then everybody else was going to die too, and then stupid little cat was going to freeze him. And there's even a scene where he's carrying Rem, I think, because she's all fuckered up. And he gets into the courtyard, and you see the cat, who is now giant lion god, towering over the mansion in the clouds behind him. And he basically just says, "You failed." And then you see his frozen head fly off his shoulders and roll across the ground in the wind.
Exactly. So I will tell you in the spoilers, in the if stories, the reason that it doesn't end the world is because Reinhard von Austria, who has the gift of basically whatever blessing he needs to fight whatever villain he's fighting, he gets, which is the most OP power. It's like, I'm undefeatable because I can just get what I need.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the one who ends up killing Puck. So the world, because there are side stories. They're called, like the if stories, which are.
I was gonna say, this does not sound like the anime because Puck ain't dead.
No. So what's interesting is the author has taken basically what ifs for ReZero, where in this case it was what if like Subaru just ran away with Rem. When they talk about doing it, they actually leave, and so you find out that Amelia did die, Puck did start going off, and then Reinhard von Austria kills Puck because he's the hero of the world and he can do that. So, and they're they're living their own life away from all that, and they have kids, and but there's other problems they run into. It was more like running away doesn't get you solve all your problems. You run into new problems from running away. So those are side stories. But now that we're in the spoilers on season 1, the way it's not Subaru for the first dozen episodes is just learning the world, and he's doing stupid stuff and he's being goofy, but he hasn't done anything really stupid that has screwed up the world for him. He's done things where he hasn't had a lot of character growth, even though he's been dying. So within those first dozen episodes, the mansion arc, which he ends up saving Rem. And that was his first moment where he did heroic things to help somebody, and also solves.
Actually, now that you mention that, Emilia is worst girl, because Emilia made a suggestion that fucks him over in the first arc.
Yeah, Amelia doesn't. That's why I've told you, Rem is best girl, 100%. Season 1 especially. Season 2, Amelia has, and especially if you watch viewing order you should watch, I guess, would be season 1 director's cut, where it includes all the OVA stuff. Then there's an OVA about Amelia and Puck and how they met, which gives you a lot of Amelia's backstory and where she came from. And then that leads into season 2, and you should watch season 2 from there. And that, by watching all that, it does with that OVA, and then season 2 is really good for actually building Amelia's character. I'm going to tell you, by the end of season 2, you're going to like Amelia a lot more. Now, they did have to sideline Rem to have that happen. I think they knew Rem was inherently a more lovable character.
They sidelined the hell out of her. They were like, everybody likes Rem too much. We gotta bench Rem.
But it was done really well too, right? I mean, I'm going to be honest. It was.
I have. I mean,
because
issues with it.
Because it's a perfect way to, for Subaru, at least for me, it was like, this is the perfect, Subaru's getting his happy ending, right? He's telling Amelia he loves her. Amelia's like, I love you too. We're going to have the happy stuff. He also thinks he's going to, he's got number 2 in the wings, because it's normal in anime for you to have first wife, second wife. It can happen.
And that's what I hate about Subaru.
And whatever. Rem was fine with it. Don't judge. But
here's the issue.
When she says, "Who's Rem?"
Subaru,
it was so.
Oh yeah, that nailed me. And I was a little annoyed that they used it as a red herring. Because in the fight with the white whale, we know that if you get eaten by the whale or get destroyed by the whale's mist, everybody forgets who you are. You cease to exist. Your memory is gone. No one can remember you. They except for weirdly Subaru, which they haven't quite explained that one.
They do.
Okay, but
It's by arc 6 and 7, but yes.
yeah, like everybody else forgets, and you learn this in the first time when Subaru is trying to go back to the mansion directly. He runs into the white whale, which is how he is able to build this alliance, because he knows exactly where the white whale is going to be and when. But the whale just obliterates a carriage right next to them, and he looks over, and then he looks back at the driver, who is kind of a growing character now, and he goes, "Where was the carriage that was right next to us?" And he's like, "There was no carriage next to us in this formation." And then you start to figure it out over time that people forget. Because I think in that same one, Best Girl does what Best Girl does, and she's like, "Go on living," and she just jumps out the back of the freaking carriage and goes and fights the whale by herself.
Yep.
And I kind of don't like the way the mechanic works in general, but like when he finally does get to the mansion, and Ram goes,
Who's Rem?
"Who's Rem? I don't have a sister." I'm like, "Fuck you." But no fucking way.
It's
No, after what we saw Ram do when she thought that Subaru may have killed Rem in the first arc, there's no way she forgets.
That's the power, man. That's going to come up, and you know it from season 2. It's one of the witches cults, right? There's archbishops, sin archbishops, and each one gets a power from one of the witches. And we've got the witch of
it's derivative of a deadly sin.
Yeah, so there's sloth and greed and pride. Although I think pride hasn't officially shown up yet. There's a lot of theories on that.
I think he officially showed up in episode 1.
I was going to say there's theories that it's Subaru, but it's not going to...
We're in spoiler territory now. I think he showed up in episode 1.
It doesn't work, though, because there's, when you know about the stuff with Satella and why Satella is Satella gives him return by death because she loves Subaru. And so she can't stand, so she won't let Subaru die. It's Satella that is giving him this power, which is why they constantly say that he gives off the scent of the witch.
The backlash of that power, too. Like, every time he tries to tell someone, he gets hurt. If he just fucking goes through, like, muscles through the pain and tells someone, I'm assuming this is not unique, because it only happened one time when he tried to tell Amelia and forced it out. But then Amelia immediately died. So I'm assuming if he tells anyone straight up, they die.
The only people who get to find out about it who don't die are the other witches who are aware of it because they're already dead, sort of.
Yeah, that's a really weird fucking convoluted arc that's going on that you don't get a lot of in the first season.
Well, you're going to get a lot of it in the second. And the second season will explain it completely on why they can still exist, even though they're dead. And it's actually a very well-written and compelling reason. That's going to tie into Beatrice and Roswell, too.
Yeah, Beatrice, there's some interesting things with her toward the end, too.
Yep. So we've got the mansion arc where Subaru's there, and he ends up getting Rem to start liking him and falling in love with him because he rescues the children and Rem and Ram in the forest and comes up because Natsuki Subaru's, and this is going to be...
And devoid of any real power, he just runs up on this giant puppy monster.
Well, this is going to be a recurring theme. Natsuki Subaru's overall great power, OP Isekai power, is being bait.
Yeah, and just
and being
and
the
that's
bait.
the weird thing, because this is the broader thing that bugs me about Subaru. They give him this return by death, and it's supposed to be extremely traumatizing, and it sucks, and he hates it. I get that, right? But like, you remember how many times the muggers in the alley beat the shit out of and or killed him?
Well, that's because he didn't understand the power.
And then toward the end of it, he was just like, dude, I don't fucking care. And he's just walking by these guys who he knows will stab him. and then, okay, he doesn't like it. It sucks. But then you go a little further and he runs into the disemboweler or whatever the hell she was called. The bowel.
She's terrible. Yeah. But
she'll cut you open and watch your guts spill out. But like, he freaks out a little with that one, and that's the first time, like, I think Amelia died there too, and they're like, he puts his hand on her, and he's like, stay with me, don't go, I'll save you, and it's lame and terrible.
I think that was his first death, if I remember right, wasn't it?
It might have been.
Yeah, that was the first one, and then he dies with the muggers after that.
Yeah, and like, it is less and less traumatizing the more it happens to him, but then there'll be a relapse, like when he first ran into the whale. I don't even think it was the first time he ran into the whale. It might have been like the second or third, but like he's laying there, and the whale's looking at him, and he starts, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. And it's like, dude, you've died like fucking 20 times now.
Because he never stops hating dying. And he also, what we talked about, he starts getting what
Okay,
really.
then keep that shit to yourself. Just don't say it.
Yeah.
Die with some dignity, man.
Well, if you want to talk the part where he lost his dignity, is when, and this is one of my favorite parts, where the save point had moved after he did that stupid outburst in the court about being the knight for Amelia. And then even Amelia's like, "You douchebag, don't do that." And then
Where she
Julius,
straight up was like, "I'm done with you. I'm
yeah,
gone," and
yeah.
she actually left.
See,
That was
she's,
probably the most likable thing she did in the whole first season.
and then Julius, who we both liked from the beginning, who Subaru liked to pretend was some stuck-up jerk. He just had manners and honor, and you didn't. So he,
And pride in his
yeah,
accomplishments as a
and
knight.
and then Julius beat the ever-loving shit out of him.
Well, he walked into the freaking court
Yep.
uninvited, got all loud and obnoxious with everybody in the room, said knights were a bunch of like weak ass bitches that couldn't accomplish anything. Like he just shit all over the knights right there in front of all of the knights. And so yeah, afterwards Julius is like, "I challenge you to single combat, duel. We won't fight to the death, but you need to be taught a lesson." And this dumb fuck who has no sword skill whatsoever, none. Zero. He's never even heard of a combo attack. He will swing the sword and then swing it again and again and again and hope something changes. But he goes up against a knight
And this
with
is
a
what,
wooden stick.
and it's great because in most animes he would somehow win. In this anime, he gets the
Yeah,
shit
he
kicked out
tried
of
to
him.
use his one weird shitty power.
Yeah, the
Like,
gate, the smoke gate or whatever. Yeah,
yeah,
and
the blinding spell.
yeah, and he ends up like screwing that up. And what was great is he got the shit beat out of him, and he had to learn the lesson. He had to be humbled, and it was important for his growth.
Yeah.
And then when the witch cult part, arc is happening, and he's trying all these different ways to save everybody, and he can't, and it's just taking its toll. He's seeing, and I believe it was after the traumatic, like where Rem got just destroyed in front of him. I believe it's episode 18, which is one of the most beloved episodes of ReZero because it's got Rem's speech to Subaru, where Subaru's like, "We need to run away. We need to go," because he's just like, he's giving up on trying to save everybody. And he just says like, "Ram, we can just be happy with just the two of us. We'll leave everybody else." We know, because he knows they're going to die, right? He knows if he leaves, everybody in that mansion's dying. And he's just
and he's basically just consigned himself to the fact that even if he tries to save them, everybody in that mansion is dying.
Because, remember at this point, he's looped a lot of times, and it's just new and different ways for everybody to be tortured and murdered, and like including in the entire village around it. And I think it's natural. Like if you keep seeing that, you're just like, you know what? I can't save anyone. I'm just going to leave and move on. That's not a situation where it's not something you could see a character doing. And it's not like he just gave up after one try. He kept trying, and it somehow managed to be worse the way he was doing it every time. Like he's trying to bring people in, and he ends up getting more people killed.
Yeah, but that's kind of the part of it that bugs me. Like, yes, I could see it happening the first couple of times and being an extremely traumatizing experience. Definitely probably some shell shock PTSD style stuff going on with it. But with as many times as it has happened by the end of the first season, it should start to evolve into a more desensitized thing. Like,
which you do see in the second season, where he starts just like, you know what? A bad thing happened with Rem. Let me just go ahead and suicide myself and do it.
I liked him after that one. I was like, yeah, you better. You take that knife and you stab yourself in the fucking throat right now. Make it happen.
What was shocking about that scene, he's in front of like Amelia. He just doesn't give a fuck. He's just like knife.
No, Amelia wasn't there. I just watched the episode.
Was she not
ran
there?
and found Rem, and she was laid down, and he was begging the doctor to wake her up. And the doctor was like, "There's nothing I can do," and just walked away. And he was just there alone with Rem, and there was a knife sitting next to her for some reason, or he had picked it up earlier. I don't know, but there was a knife.
Yeah, so I mean, he did that, and then like we talked about, his save points move, and he doesn't have any control over it. So his save point had moved, and at the save point, Rem was already disappeared. Well, mentally, she was in her, I believe they call it like sleeping beauty sickness or whatever.
They literally call it Sleeping Beauty's malady or some crap.
Yeah,
like,
it's
so
fine.
they have Sleeping Beauty here. Like,
it works.
That was a little I didn't like that. I didn't like I don't like the name.
What I do like is how they did it to where Krush got partially, where she was, because there's...
Well, that's because her memories were eaten, but her name was not.
Yeah, so with the Sin Archbishop that does this, they can either eat your memories and everyone's memory of you. In that case, if you become the Sleeping Beauty and nobody knows who you were, and you're basically, because you're a blank slate, you're just asleep because you have no knowledge, no memory, no personality. The other thing it can do is just eat your name, right? And that's what happened to Krush, and by doing that, you take all the memories from the person.
And that's one of those discontinuities that I just can't quite accept. Like for the whale, it's like, okay, you get eaten by the whale or consumed in the mist, like the mist attacks, you cease to exist and you're almost removed as an entity from the timeline, along with anyone who ever met you losing their memory of you. Like you're gone. You never did exist after the whale hit you. But as far as the eating your name, I'm fine with, kind of. And
So
then eating everyone's memories of you, like wouldn't you have to go to everyone else to get those memories?
It's a Sin Archbishop power from one
Yeah.
of the witches, and
And if it does function the exact same way as the mist, why does it leave a body?
because so you find out that the mob beasts, the like mega beasts that are being fought, were created by one of the other witches, so they were mimicking powers from. So that's why it's different a little bit. Once you get to season 2, they're going to kind of talk about that a little. So because season 2 is also going to feature one of the other great beasts. And,
good, because I like the mob beasts. They're probably the best part of this anime right now.
it is going to be one of the more disturbing ones, and you won't think it is until you see it. And I'm not going to ruin it for you because I want you to go in this one blind when you get to it.
I mean, don't spoil it for me.
Yeah,
we won't get into too many season 2 spoilers because I've only seen the first couple of episodes.
No, but in season 1, I think there's moments for Subaru each time where it's natural for him to have the backslide, and then Rem gives him the pep talk to end all pep talks in episode 18, and that's when he finally, again, this is
Subaru. And then he spits in her face.
He doesn't spit in her face.
He basically spits in her face.
She talked him into staying.
She gives him this pep talk. He just asked her. He just basically proposed to this woman. Let's run away together. Let's elope. And she says no, and gives him this huge pep talk and unfucks his death-addled little brain and tells him that she loves him. And then he goes, yeah, but I love Emilia. And it's like, you just fucking asked her and she told you she loves you.
You know this is how animes go.
And then you're like, oh, my heart belongs to Emilia. And if I were Rem, I'd have been like, not anymore, bitch, and ripped it right out of his damn chest.
Dropping the Morning Star out and just doing it.
Yeah, just fucking knock his head off for the 4th time.
No.
And this is the other thing that pisses me off. Then, at the end of the fucking season, he's sitting in there with Emilia, and he's like, Rem told me she loves me, you forgot to mention the part where you asked her to run away with you. You could talk shit on Rem, but you're not going to own up to your own failure.
No, he's not talking shit. He's just trying to be upfront that there's going to be another one in the harem.
Yeah, he's trying to be upfront that Rem did something that wasn't good, but he's not going to talk about his own.
It's all okay because what was Emilia's response?
Who's Rem?
Who's Rem? So it didn't even matter.
But it doesn't change the fact that he's still a sniveling little coward who will not tell the truth. Like, I'm sorry, but when you omit the fact that the only reason she told you that was because you asked her to run away with you, that's kind of changes the implication a little, doesn't it?
I think given the circumstances where he had just looped 4 or 5 times fighting the witches cult, it's okay that he was maybe not going into every detail. No, he had
a nice long rest with his head in her lap, and he didn't want to fuck that up. That's all that was. Like, ooh, I'm in good with Emilia right now. Now's not... Maybe next time I make her really mad, I'll tell her the bad shit that I did. But for now, I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
So can we... let's go and just talk about how great the sequence with the witches cult fight was with Julius and him, and how it took 4 episodes to do it right, because each time he's like finding the nuance, like because they gave Beetlejuice a great power where he's got his fingers and he can transfer his consciousness into the other people.
Which was a little weird at first because they didn't tell you what the hell was going on right away. But I did like that because the first time they had old boy with the swords, the old butler badass, just jump down and chop him in half. And then they blew him up just to be sure.
And then everybody's like, mission accomplished. We're all good.
Well, the two little merc kids were like, yeah, he's totally dead. And Subaru was like, I'm not sure. Can we, like, we need to make sure he's dead. And the kid was like, blah, and blew him up with a fireball. And was like, there, he's dead and he is vaporized. So he's definitely dead now.
Well, you have to appreciate Subaru knowing enough to be like, let's make sure.
But, I mean, you should always make sure, especially when you're talking about like weird monster fuckers. But
what it turned out is that because he could swap bodies with his fingers, he wasn't all the way dead. And then
it wasn't literally like his fingers were crawling around, like
I love the little style, and we talked about it, the little tick where he's biting his fingers. But that's what makes he was such a great, creepy character design.
And the way his head would tilt all the way to a 90 degree.
Yeah, exactly.
But he was a disturbing character, and his fingers are not like his fingers because he chews those off all the time. But like his fingers were the cultists in his group that were elevated to the next level. If his body died, he could take his little soul and consciousness and jump into one of the other bodies. So all the fingers were scattered among his cultists, and I think they determined there were 10 of them.
Yep, and so that's why they had to keep making new plans to take out all the fingers before the fight with him, so he had no place for his consciousness to go.
Yeah, because it kept going wrong.
Yes, and which is great. And then my favorite version,
the first time, like the random extra, the sloth guy.
Yep,
the dude who's the big sloth, like.
Yeah.
Like, they think they've won and everything, and then a bunch of arms, because he's got, like, the shadow arms that come out of his back and will, like, rip people apart. Like, grab a whole bunch of the guys standing around Subaru and just, like he does. He twists them like a wet rag until the blood starts coming out.
I like my favorite loop in that fight was when Subaru was the one who got possessed. And he's fighting. He's trying to like fight it off and tell him.
And that's why I like Felix. That's why Felix is one of my favorite characters, because Julius wouldn't do it. Julius and this is the one time I will say Julius was fucked up, like wrong.
Well, it's because he's
Subaru
too honorable.
Begged them to kill him, and Julius was like, "I can't do that." And Felix was like, "I'm gonna kill him."
Yep.
Felix cried when he killed him, but Felix fucking killed him because Felix has more strength of resolve than anyone else.
But isn't that what's great about this show? Like, think of how, like, this is, you don't get that in a lot of animes where you have think of all the moments that are awesome. I know you have your problems with some.
No, it's good in that they definitely do a good job making it an emotional roller coaster. They do that really well.
And I think the animation quality is one of the best I've seen in anime.
It's on par with most modern.
I feel like they put so much more effort into the character design.
Well, the character design is good. The art is on point. I don't like some of the eyes. Some of the eyes are a little weird just because they try to make them special. Like how Beatrice has little butterfly eyes. That's stupid looking. I'm sorry, it's just stupid looking. Like,
it's because she's a spirit. She's not a real.
Why it is? I just think it looks stupid. And then like there were a couple of. Like, I love the battle with the white whale. Don't get me wrong. It was absolutely effing amazing. The progression was good, everything else. But there were a couple of parts where they just wanted more action. So, like, they went super speed. The butler is on top of this thing, dragging the sword through its flesh and just opening up this giant gash. And he's moving like Goku speed.
He does have
real fast.
He has them. I forget? Was it season 1? Yeah, season 1 had the flashback where he shows the backstory, right?
For the butler?
Yeah, for the butler, where you see the courtship.
Yeah, he didn't even know she was the sword master for the longest time. He was out there training, and she was out there smelling the roses or looking at the flowers and whatnot. Always asking him if he liked flowers, and he didn't know she was way more badass than he'd ever be.
Exactly, and that's one of the things I like. If you're going to do diversity stuff, right? How great was it the way they did that? Like, she was still a super feminine character who wanted to be a feminine. She wanted to just be a happy...
Yeah, she didn't have man muscles. No. She wasn't like... She had a chest.
If she's OP because she can be OP, give her the power to do it because she's got the OP. You don't have to make her not a feminine woman to do it because it's anime, right? You get the luxury of doing that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a magic sword. It's not like she's swinging around like the Buster sword. She's not... carrying a cloud level sword here. She's carrying a sword that she could easily wield in the way she wields it. And I don't ever see her doing like mad physical overpowering moves. She's just really good with that sword.
Yep. And Patrosh, that's the name of his ground dragon, who is awesome.
Oh yeah, he's pretty good. He does a lot of things and some key areas of the story that make all the difference in the world.
In the fight with the white whale. Like, I mean, when him and Rem are riding Patrosh
Yep.
and like being bait, it was such a great. And then he comes up with the great, like, you know what? Let's just drop the tree on it.
Well, and then at the very end too, when he finds the explosives in the carriage and goes to throw them inside the whale's corpse, and it goes off before he gets clear. Who saved his ass?
Rem.
No, Patrosh.
Well, no, Patrosh. That's right.
Like Patrosh, like grabbed him and took the explosion and like cradled him in his arms like a wee little baby.
It makes there's an anime YouTuber who reviewed it, and he makes a funny joke about how Patrosh is actually Best Girl.
I mean, Patrosh could be Best Girl.
So, but my favorite character in season 1 is actually Wilhelm. Rem is Best Girl, but that episode where you get the backstory, where you see the courtship, gives so much depth to his character that you don't think is there, and you understand why he's such a broken man. He's been for 20 years. He's been
put it in there in the worst possible place. Like they kept sprinkling those bits of the story in the middle of the battle with the white whale, and I'm like, dude, you could have given us this on the road. Because every time you go back to this story, I'm like, I don't give a shit. I want to see what's happening with this whale. I know they're trying to keep it fresh in your mind and build up that attachment so that every time it looks like he's about to die, you go, "Yay, he didn't die!" But fuck you. I want to see the fight, especially when we find out there's not one, there's 3, even though they're all one, but there's 3.
I love the leading up to the white whale fight. Just how Subaru has to be humbled again. He screws it up, but he gets these bits of information each loop, and he finally puts it together with Rem, like after she gives him the pep talk, and he figures out a way, like, look, I can't do this on my own. He's learning that he wants to be the guy who fixes the problems, but he learns that, you know what, I can't, and I need to get the people who have the skills and resources to do this.
Well, that's his biggest failure, and why he very much is being set up to, at the very least, look as though he could be Pride.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. I mean,
he
that's
has
why
too much of it. He wants to be the guy that solves the problems. He wants to be the great hero of all the Isekai stories that he's probably read and played in video games and such. But he needs the rest of the world to be on board. And I mean, shit, that scene where Emilia leaves him, like all that shit he was saying was like, you are a spouse abuser. No one should ever marry you because you're going to hit them and then tell them that it's because you love them and that everything you do is for them. And like, you are a fucked up human being.
So it's several arcs into the future, and I don't know if it'll ever get animated, but I'm going to give you another insight on why Wilhelm is a super compelling character. He ends up having to fight his wife as a reanimated corpse, and it's terribly traumatic for him.
Dude, what if they make it now? We put spoilers in before there was even anything to spoil.
Yep. So, I mean, this would be like season 4 of the anime, so that's another 10 years down the road. I mean,
I kind of figured because I didn't know how it would be, but it's like she's gonna reappear somehow. They're gonna bring that back because they wouldn't have kept Wilhelm around unless there was a reason to keep Wilhelm around.
Oh, fun fact! I'm looking it up real quick. She is credited with over 10,000 kills in that demi-human war she was fighting in.
Oh, so she's a racist. we found her character flaw.
She was the sword saint. Yeah,
but yeah,
I don't know. So, but anyway, so Wilhelm is just. I thought the way they did, like you introduce and then you can see why afterwards he's super bonded to Subaru, because the person who brought you the ability to get closure on a 20-year gaping emotional wound is going to suddenly be like, irreplaceable to you. So Wilhelm always is there for Subaru.
Yeah. And the one time I think I really actually liked Subaru was because I thought we were going to be done with it at this point, but like, when he first woke up in bed, and because he beat the shit out of his hands, basically, like doing all this work around the mansion. And that's why Emilia fucked him, by the way. Emilia screwed him over because he was like, because he basically, since he saved Emilia, the weird dude, the Lord of the Manor, what's his name?
Roswaal
offered him a boon of whatever he wanted. Roswaal would try to make it happen. And the first time he was like, I want a job, like hire me. I want to be part of the staff because I like it here. And so he busted up his hands real bad. And like after that conversation, he was talking to Amelia later, and she's like, "Why did you ask for a job?" And he was like, "Because I really like the mansion, and I want to stay here with you guys." She's like, "Then why didn't you just ask to be a guest forever?" And he was like, "Oh, that's a great idea." Well, when he wakes up the next morning, his hands aren't all fucked up anymore, and he's like, "Did I die? Did I die while I was sleeping?"
Yep.
And so he has to go through that whole section again. And this time he goes, "I'd like to be a guest in the mansion forever," because he wanted to have the time to invest. Now, what he didn't realize was that was what was fucking him over, because he wasn't building up a relationship with Rem and Ram. And Rem did not like him. She did not trust him. She thought he was a spy, and she was going to take care of it.
Well, they also point out that he gives off the scent of the witch.
Yeah.
Right.
And which he didn't know at the time.
Yeah. But Rem, who still has her Oni horn, can sense it. Whereas Ram, because she lost it, doesn't have that anymore.
Yeah. But she was watching him anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get those scenes where she's like, it's been a week and nothing. He has done nothing, but I'm keeping an eye on him.
Mm-hmm.
But like Rem, basically, he finally realizes that the reason he keeps dying in the night is because there's like a curse being cast, and so the curse, when it affects him, basically just makes him like puke out his guts and feel really sick and wither and die.
Yep, and he doesn't realize that
happens.
Yeah, then
he's stumbling along, and he hears this chain, and he falls on the ground, and he's puking, and he can't see anything, and then all of a sudden you hear a splat, and his eye rolls across the floor.
Yep, because Rem took care of business.
So he doesn't do that again. This time he's going to try and stay up all night or whatever. And the next morning he finds out that Rem was cursed instead, and they all think he done did it, because he was hiding out in the library, and the library is hard to reach.
Yeah, he's the only one who can just walk into it.
Yeah, but so he goes back out there, and like it's funny because he hears Ram screaming, just screaming, and he goes and he finds Ram crouched over Rem, who is dead, and then Ram like looks at him, and she starts summoning all this mad wind power, and she's like, "I'll fucking kill you," and like not exaggerating, she is ready to kill. But he made a deal with Beatrice, and Beatrice is supposed to protect him, and she made a covenant or whatever they are, or so it's contract. She has to do it. So she pulls up a shield and is like, "Nah, he's under my protection. No way, bitch."
Yep.
And then Roswell is like, "Well, I mean, we got to figure this out." So he starts pulling all his magic out, and he's like, "I'm going to fuck somebody up. Before this day is over, somebody getting killed." And Amelia's like, "You guys should all just calm down." And Subaru's like, "I'm out." And he just runs away. He bolts down the hall, out the front door, and he's just running.
Which was a mistake, because Beatrice is only inside the mansion.
She can go anywhere on the mansion grounds, and he didn't get off the grounds because he went out to a cliff. And Beatrice showed up and was like, "You're lucky I found you before she did, because she's looking for you." And then Ram comes walking up, just like tearing apart everything around her with this magic, because she's not done. And Subaru finally does something that I respect. He's like, "This is my fault, and I need to fix it." And he jumps off the cliff.
Yep. Like, Subaru doesn't. So one of the things that repeats season 1, season 2, and throughout the book, Subaru will take the L when he has to save the people around him. And he doesn't hesitate ever about doing that.
He doesn't now.
Well, now that he understands what he's got. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in season 2, when he takes the knife to the throat and he's like, "Rems, let me do this." Bam. Then he realizes save point's too far forward, so that's not going to work. I'm going to have to find a new way to fix this.
Well, maybe. He's pretty fucking useless right now.
I don't know. You're 2-3 episodes into season 2.
Yeah, I'm only a few episodes in, and the one other thing I would say is I still worry about power creep, because they keep talking about how his gait is weird.
So you don't have to worry about that, actually, because it's...
Well, I know with you in the you're reading like the books or some shit, so apparently you're 800 years in the future after he dies and his kids took over and their kids took over, and
those are the if ones. In
the first season, they find out that he does indeed have a gate, and it's a weird gate, and they're not exactly sure why, but it's weird. That's all they ever say is your gate is odd. Your gate doesn't work quite right, and you have no control over your gate. But they teach him a spell anyway, because they find out he has shadow affinity. Go fucking figure. Pride.
Or the Satella the witch.
Yeah, but like, so they teach him how to cast a shadow spell. I think Puck teaches him. Puck actually is the one that teaches him how to cast the spell. And they're like, if you do it right, little darkness will come out and blind him. Every time he does it, he explodes. Like,
yep.
Darkness just envelops the entire courtyard the first time he tries to do this thing.
So the power creep that's going to come up with Subaru is more. Have they shown it in season 2?
If they teach him more spells, he could be a pretty effective caster. But then also the other weird thing is they have to repair his gate because
he broke it.
Yeah, he broke it
because he used it wrong.
And then after it was broken and Felix was healing him up and being like, you need to let your gate rest. He was like, I'm gonna go use it again and try and kick this Julius guy's ass.
Yeah, so he permanently breaks it. That's why his mission power creep is not going to be an issue for that.
So they just gave it to him so that he could accomplish a few basic tasks and then took it away? Because I know as it stands right now, Felix told him 3 months before you cast anything.
So there's a way around it that they get to eventually, but it's a spoiler for season 2, so I'm not going to mention it. But it is something that makes complete sense and also still avoids power creep.
Okay, I can accept that.
And then once you finish season 2 further, we can talk about where the real power creep for Subaru is going to come from, because it's not from the gate.
I mean, no. And honestly, Return by Death is a pretty fucking substantial power in its own right when you think about it. Like, oh, you have the ability to know everything that's going to happen for the next few days?
So to be fair, though, Subaru doesn't actually have that power.
He doesn't, but he does, because if he goes forward a little and dies and goes back, the downside is he doesn't know how far he has to go forward before he can't go back to that point.
No, what I'm saying is the Return by Death is not something Subaru actually has as a power. It's something the Witch of Envy is doing. Yeah,
it's something that's being done to him, but just because it's not his to command and control doesn't change the fact that it's being used as a power.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, no cleric in D&D ever said, it's my power, when they cast all the healing spells and the holy light and the radiant fire and everything else. They go, it is the power from my god. But everyone in their party goes, it's your fucking power, now use it.
True. So, all right. Is there any other spoiler discussion you want to go over?
No, I think I've covered everything that I thought was worth talking about.
So my spoiler summation is it's awesome because every time Subaru backslides, there's story reasons why he does. You may not like him as a person, but there's reason you can see the growth. He starts out as an unlikable person, and Subaru doesn't like himself. It's a thing that comes up. In fact, I think even in the first couple episodes of season 2, it's a very strong theme about Subaru's self-loathing and hatred of himself is the core problem.
It's really annoying.
But it's like when it's actually something that they make very clear as the problem for the character and that he's working on, I don't have a problem with that being his flaw, because it's not like, it's not like Rey in Star Wars where the flaw was she's perfect and it just annoys you. This is a character who actually genuinely has flaws.
There's no issues with any character in this story being a Mary Sue.
Yeah, this is true.
I think the closest you get to a Mary Sue in this story might be Rem, and
no, Reinhardt is probably the Mary Sue.
Oh, I guess Reinhardt. Yeah, but like I said, he's such a non-element after the first couple of episodes.
But they do give Reinhardt challenges, like what you find out obviously from the fact that Wilhelm is his grandfather. And he inherited like the sword.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, the Sword Saint title passed to him when his grandmother died. So like he got it because she died. And so there's a lot of familial guilt and issues going on there. And there's going to be stuff going on with the fact that he pledged to be Felt's knight representative. And she's obviously, as was evidenced, she's an agent of chaos and anarchy. Like she's like, if I get to be in charge, it's all getting burned down. F everyone here.
Yeah, but she's not even taking it serious. They kind of forced her to play the game. She doesn't want to play the game. She wants nothing to do with it. She just wants to go back to being like a street urchin and stealing shit and hanging out with old boy.
Yeah, and so, but I think there's more. Like, there's going to be more going on with it I think he's a Mary Sue in what we've seen. The fact that bear in mind, he's also 20 years into his career of being, he's 20 something years old. He's been the sword saint since he was a child. We don't know how he's learned and, grown
yeah, let's be honest. The fucking crazy girl who was cutting people's stomachs open at the beginning, like, she gave him a run for his money.
She did.
If not for the fact that she was fighting multiple people throughout the course of that battle, like, she was going toe to toe with him pretty well for a while there until he busted out, like, God sword.
Yeah. And plus, and she still managed to almost disembowel Subaru. He still got sliced open and had to be, healed. And of course, our boy Subaru was like, "What do you want, Subaru? I want to go on a date." No, he wants her name, right? Didn't he say, "I just want to know your name"?
Yeah, I want to know your name. I want to know your name. Fucking idiot.
Come on, like it's a little. I
also don't like a fundamental tenet of the character, which is like, because he explains right afterwards, it's what I wanted most right now. Like, so it's what I asked for. Fuck you, dude. Like, think, plan, something. You are the worst person to have the power you have.
This is part of the evolution of the character.
I know.
He starts to learn. He learns how to plan. He's going to learn how to make plans and try to use knowledge, plan ahead, not always just rely on good luck and being stupid.
I mean, I think one of the big issues I have is the Rem thing. First of all, like the way he treats Rem pisses me off to no end, and some of the things that he does with regards to that, especially at the end where he straight lies about what happened because he only talks about the half that makes her look bad and doesn't talk about the bad shit that he did.
I disagree with that.
It pisses me off.
I don't agree with that.
It pisses me off to no end. Like, you're gonna tell that part of it, but not the part that immediately preceded it. You're not gonna tell why she said all that. You're just gonna tell that part. So that bugs me. But the thing that I think is throwing me off is usually in anime you get a much faster character development, and they are slow playing, which is not a bad thing. But I think it is throwing me off because it makes the character feel like he's not developing to a certain degree.
Yeah, it takes a long time. I mean, like I said, they're up to arc 7. I think each arc has maybe 100 and something chapters. And so I think by the end of season 2, you're through arc 4, which is the sanctuary is the main thing they deal with, which is going to end up being really good for finding out a lot more about the world's backstory, because Subaru doesn't know. Remember, for as long as Subaru's been there and as much as he's done, he didn't grow up. And like, there's a running thing with Amelia and how everybody immediately distrusts her, and it's because she looks identical basically to the witch of.
And it's not even immediately distrust her; they like hate her and want her to go away.
So the backstory of the world of ReZero is Satella, who was the Witch of Envy about 400 years, I think, prior to when Subaru shows up, almost destroyed the entire world. Her name
was Satella the first time she met him.
Because it'd be like...
Because that one weirded me out too, and they never really addressed it. But the first time she met him, she said her name was Satella. He died and reset, and then he saw her walking along and was like, Satella, and she was like, why did you call me that? And I'm like, what the fuck?
So
never got addressed.
Yeah, so in the first iteration, they're having a good time and they're innocent, and she sees that he doesn't care at all about the fact that she's a half elf and she has the hair color she has and all those traits that are known to be Satella. So in the first episode, it was almost like she's just seeing how naive he is because she says the name. That it'd be like being Lord Voldemort in Harry Potter, right? So when she does that, it's a way of testing if he genuinely doesn't care and doesn't know.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you that.
And he doesn't. So when he resets and he sees her and he just starts screaming it, it'd be like saying Voldemort, Voldemort to somebody who looks like it, because you got to imagine if you're in Harry Potter world and you looked like Voldemort, you probably wouldn't be very trusted, and having someone yell that at you in the street would make you feel like they're trying to start a mob to come after you and maybe do bad things. And you got to figure that Amelia in her life has had this happen where people have been distrustful and want to just get rid of her because of them associating her with the Witch of Envy. When you watch the OVA, you kind of get a feeling for that too, that she's had issues with civilian populations that she comes into contact with because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a quick way to see where just because he has knowledge from one loop, it doesn't always make things better for the second loop. He can screw things up because the sequence of events that get you into that situation, you can't force it. And it's come up a lot sometimes when you see it. A Groundhog Day with Bill Murray is a good example. There were times where Bill in that movie was trying to recreate what he thought was the most amazing night of his life, the date he had with it. And when he tries to force it, it ends terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not organic. It didn't happen naturally. You can't make those things happen. Subaru's learning that the hard way too, because he hasn't lived it before, where he thinks he did the loop this way, and so he's just trying to speed run it to get right to it, and it doesn't work that way. You can't speed run the development, which is kind of a nice way of, in the first 2 episodes, trying to give you, the viewer, a shorthand that this anime is going to be more of a slow burn. You can't speed run the development because it's not going to work right.
Yeah, I can see that.
We're going to do this show as we find animes that we want to kind of talk about.
And throw them in the comments if you've got suggestions.
Yeah, because
doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get around to them. We will reserve veto power because,
we won't redo a certain anime.
Yeah, we're not going to redo a certain anime. We're not going to.
Now, what I will say, by the same author, there's an anime called The World's Finest Assassin Gets Reincarnated as an Aristocrat, and I actually enjoyed that one. And it's not wholly
inappropriate. If you were to sum it up, everything we talked about, characters, setting, rules of the world, everything, all of it. What's the final number for you?
On a scale of 10,
yeah,
I give ReZero a 9.
All right. I give it a 7.5.
And I
do like it. I think it's better than most. I think, especially when we get into supporting cast, some of the characters are very thin. In order to make them feel unique, they tack on stupid things like, I suppose, which is just like, you didn't need that for the character. You could have just made her the unsociable bookworm.
Okay, watch when you're done with season 2. We'll do a follow up, and then
we can do a follow up
because you're gonna change. You're gonna be like, oh, damn it.
And it's not that I don't like those characters. It's just that I think those characters are kind of poorly written. And I think there's several of them that are. Like, many of them are incredibly well written. And they do make up for it a little, but some of them are just They're cardboard cutouts that just need to fit a genre and an archetype.
What I'm going to tell you with ReZero, if you stick with it, and I can't guarantee that they'll ever make the anime up to the point where that happens, but if you are really interested and you like the storyline and you want to follow it, if you do switch over to the written word, the light novels, the web novels, there is no character that you might think of that starts paper thin that does not get developed, and developed in a way that is awesome, and developed in a way where you're like, wow, I understand where the mannerisms are, the like little, quirks that you thought maybe were just there to make them, have something when they were paper thin characters. Once you see the full backstory they get that leads them to where you find the introduction. Remember, this is a world that's been going on for years before Subaru got there. So when you get those moments, when they do the backstories to a person, it's awesome. Like, I've never been let down with what they've done for the characters. When we're done recording, for example, I'll give you what Al's backstory is, because I don't think they'll get to it in the anime for like a decade. And when you hear it, you'll be like, oh man, that's awesome. He's not just some interesting character design where it's a guy who's wearing a knight's helmet without a shirt, and it just seems weird.
So. I mean, I just immediately give him Goblin Slayer voice and call it good.
Yeah, so that's like the design is basically Goblin Slayer without a shirt.
Pretty much, yeah.
So,
but right. Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, season 2 may raise the number for me a little, but there's just some things, and it's really hard for me to like an unlikable character. And as it stands, although Subaru is getting better, I still get the distinct impression that if I met this guy, I would be disgusted with him.
And I think so far in the series, there's still plenty that you would be. And that's how it should be, because this is the long-term growth character, right?
Yeah.
So that's what was. So I think we sum up. My feelings are that ReZero is one of my all-time favorites. You can get that sense from the way I talk about it. And I think everybody who likes anime will be able to enjoy it. may not love it the way I do, but this is, for anime fans, this is a show that's definitely worth the investment of time. You're not going to come out with it and not feel like, oh man, that was stupid, I wish I hadn't watched it.
Yep. And just to give a little preview, as it were, for the next time we do one of these, which we'll see. Hopefully we can make this a regular thing, but the next time we do one of these, the whole idea is, Vinny, you're the Isekai guy. I'm the slice of life guy. So we were going to throw different animes at each other that we force each other to watch. And since I like slice of life, but I want to ease Vinny into the slice of life, I know he's experienced with slice of life. He's seen plenty of slice of life. But since I like that, we're going to go kind of right down the middle, and next time we're going to do The Devil is a Part-Timer Season 1.
I've heard nothing
it
but
looks
good
like
things,
Season 2 is coming, and I love that anime.
I've heard good things. I'm actually just waiting to be able to watch it legally, so which is supposed to be happening in the next few weeks for me, thanks to a merger that just seemed to have finished. But that's a good place, I think, to finish up. So Weeb Bout 1 in the books for ReZero. Both of us came out saying that it was a positive show. I'm more positive than Joey, but I think by season 2 he might be more positive than he's been, and we'll see next time when we probably do The Devil is a Part-Timer and enjoy a slice of life sort of isekai.
It's a reverse isekai.
Yeah, because
it's like, instead of going to another world, somebody from another world comes to our world.
Exactly. So that sounds
interesting. And then gets himself a job.
And what you'll notice for our regular podcast listeners is that Mike's not here because he's not into anime. But we're working on that.
He knows a little bit, but we haven't turned him into full-on weeb yet. It's gonna take a while, and we went so into the weeds with this, he would have no idea what was going on.
You'd be like, what are you talking about? I can tell you right now, he would not know what isekai and slice of life are. Probably just and those are the fairly popular categories of anime. So
no, and then when we start talking about like the lolly fan service and this, that, and the other, and he's like, what are you got? What?
And that's so for people, as we continue to do this, it's gonna be something I bring up. I am okay. Like, I'm not somebody who doesn't like anime. I've watched a ton since I was a kid, and I lived in Japan for a few years when I was young. So I grew up with it, and so I love it. I just personally, I can deal with the fact that they're supposed to be 18-year-old girls. I just don't need them to draw like they're 10. And that's a personal thing where I could do without.
As far as most animes go, I tolerate it, but it's not my thing. If there's enough content other than that, I'll still watch an anime with the random lolly fan service girl in it. She's just never gonna be my best girl. She's not gonna happen.
Yeah, and you can always kind of tell which is going to be the lolly because they love to give them those drill hair, drill ponytail.
Yeah, the curly ribbon hair.
Yeah, I don't know why, but apparently that must be the standard issue lolly design over there. The drill hair.
Yeah, it's one of the main ones.
All right, so the takeaways are ReZero's great, lollies aren't.
ReZero's pretty good. Lollies aren't.
So there's our agreement. And we'll see you guys next time.
See you next time.